Hello everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
1 minute, sir.
Yeah,
We'll start the session.
sure,
Good
ma'am.
afternoon, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to the final day of our faculty development program on unlocking innovations with blockchain and generative AI. Over the past 5 days, we have embarked on an enriching journey exploring groundbreaking technologies and their transformative applications in academia and industry. Today, as we conclude this remarkable program, we have three highly engaging sessions that promise to leave us with profound insights and practical knowledge. From AI driven governance in decentralized autonomous organizations and AI driven identity risk and privacy with blockchain and NFTs and digital ownership. These are the today's sessions which highlight how artificial intelligence and blockchain are reshaping the technological landscape. Let's make this final day a memorable one by actively participating and drawing maximum value from the wealth of knowledge shared by our speakers. Now, to kickstart today's program, it is my honor to invite our distinguished speaker for the first session, who will delve into the fascinating topic of AI driven governance in Davos. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Mr. Aravind, sir. Sir, the virtual floor is yours. Please.
Okay. So thank you, ma'am, and glad to be here again. So yesterday we understood uh, the convergence, right? The mega convergence of generative AI and blockchain. And we understood while generative AI is focusing on semantic web, blockchain is more a consensus driven web. And and when these transformative technologies kind of converge, we are eventually entering into an era of digital transcendence. So today we will go deep dive into uh, the the concepts of DAO. Okay, and we shall also look at the foundational concepts of DAO and the architecture of AI driven governance in DAOs and the key components of architecture, the technical architecture, and what is the activities which would happen in DAO, and what is that flow of operations which can be driven with AI and smart contracts. And then we shall also look at the identity risks and how blockchain can address the identity risks in generative AI world. And we shall also look at the key components and certain aspects to look at. So, so from now to like for next 3 hours, we will be deep diving into the foundational concepts, the key terminologies, the technical architecture, design choices, and we shall also look at certain case studies where I will take you through some existing implementations and how uh, the operational efficiencies are achieved, and the data integrity or the trust within that ecosystem or within that DAO ecosystem is achieved. So in that context, let me kickstart with the first presentation. So first, let's get accustomed with the key terms in the first half of the day. And then in the second half of the day, we shall look at uh, certain real world case studies. Okay. And also get some insights from real world implementations. So first of all, to give you a quick definition of DAO, if you carefully observe, one of the key unit of value creators in today's economy is an organization, right? Whether it is whether it is a private sector organization or a government organization, or you take a university as an organization. Organization is where a group of people with a common intent come together and try to focus on doing certain activities together and then drive certain products or solutions or services, whatever. Now, if you take very generalized example of organization, basically it is a group of people coming together and working towards certain outcomes, right? So in that similar definition, DAO is also an organization, but it has certain two prefixes. One is autonomous and second is decentralized. And yesterday I already highlighted that decentralization is all about a multi-stakeholder ownership. So in that context, this organization is not controlled by an individual or not driven by a single legal entity. Rather, it is a decentralized ownership. Okay, so that means anyone who is willing to contribute to that organization can get a equitable returns in terms of whatever effort or whatever they have contributed. And autonomy is coming because of smart contract driven operations, workflows. And in that sense, DAOs are organizations managed by smart contracts and governed by a blockchain based consensus. Why consensus is required? Because the moment there are multiple parties involved, obviously consensus is required for decision making. So as I highlighted, the key principles of DAO are decentralization, transparency, and automation. And couple of examples of DAO. One of the very early DAO implementations is Maker DAO, where a stable coin governance. So I'm not sure if stable coin concept is discussed. So stable coin is basically a crypto token, a token whose value is pegged by a fiat currency reserve or a gold reserve or an oil reserve, whatever. So basically there is a reserve, and that reserve value will decide the value of the reserve is basically backing the value of the stable coin. Okay. Now, Maker DAO is one of the stable coin based governance where various stakeholders come in, contribute to the reserve, and in proportion to the contribution of the reserve, the number of tokens are minted. And that governance is basically happening on blockchain through smart contracts. And tomorrow, if any update to the policy or any update to the compliance or anything, any policy changes, whatever, basically the DAO will receive proposals, and those proposals are voted by all these stakeholders. And based on the voting percentages or based on the what should I say, the weightage of the votes towards implementing that policy will decide. So it is like this. We all know this parliament where a lot of policies are basically pushed and all the people vote, and then certain policies will go through and certain policies may not go through. So the similar democratic model is something which happens in any DAO. And second, like Gitcoin, where like public goods funding, so say crowdfunding for certain utility token is also another example of DAO. And another interesting thing is basically the AI driven governance. Now, why AI again? See, if you carefully observe, let's take the traditional democracy. Okay. So we all, as individual citizens, we all come into consensus and we vote or elect our leader every 5 years. Right. Now, just take this activity as an example and let's try to understand some flaws in the governance of the DAO One, basically the identity of the people who vote. There is always, I mean, duplicate votes may not happen because the ink and certain things, but always identity impersonation can happen, right? So there were many scenarios which we usually see where the identity, I mean, the individual who is voting may impersonate someone else can vote, right? So there is always this identity risks which are there. And second, the percentage of voting. So there may not be active participation from in the democracy, because whatever consensus is achieved, it is achieved from the voted people. But the people who didn't vote or the people who didn't participate is also affecting the overall direction of that particular country, right? So similarly, in a DAO also, every stakeholder, an individual or an organization, will have a governance token and they vote. So the wallet with that governance token gets an opportunity to vote any policy or any decision which is going to be taken. And if there is no active participation from the DAO stakeholders, then it becomes centralized. Because the intent of decentralized autonomous organization is to kind of to kind of drive it in a decentralized mode. But if there is no active participation, that is also another challenge. So there is identity risk, there is no participation risk, right? So now to address them, we can bring in a AI driven governance where certain dynamic governance some dynamic governance principles can be adopted. And let's look at the key components of a typical DAO, which is AI driven. One, anyways, the smart contract layer, obviously, which automates the governance rules and proposals. Then an AI agent layer, which analyzes proposals and provides recommendations. Because the participation in any decision making is as good as the awareness or understanding of that individual or organization. So sometimes any policy which is thrown into DAO, sometimes if it is so deep domain or if it has so much nuances and it is very tough to kind of take a decision for that individual stakeholder, then AI agent can kind of analyze the proposal and it can provide recommendations and it can also highlight some potential flaws or potential blocks which might happen in the future. So it is like even before a proposal coming to human, an AI agent can kind of review it, analyze it, and give recommendations. And again, you might be wondering, of course, recommendations are something which are already in place. So why do we need an agentic AI functionality here? Because any AI agent thinks in the context of the individual stakeholder, right? It doesn't take a generalized, what should I say, recommendations. So now I can interact with the policy with the AI agent and ask about the policy, and I can get to understand because each individual stakeholder takes a decision based on the risk which they see or the risk which they kind of anticipate. So that is where an AI agent layer comes up. And of course, another important layer is decentralized identity. So I already told you each stakeholder should never get impersonated. So for that, a decentralized identity which is immutable and which is also, ensuring verified participants, because voting is very important and some insider attacks can't happen in the identity side of the things. And then a consensus layer, obviously, whatever voting happens, it has to happen in a fair way. Of course, we need not reveal who voted for what or who voted. I mean, what's the response of the vote? Whether they voted or not need not be disclosed to public or it need not be put on blockchain. But at least the immutability aspect of it can be always put on blockchain, like the metadata of it, and to make sure whatever voting is happening within that decentralized autonomous organization is happening in a fair way. And last but not the least, obviously the user interface layer where the end stakeholders kind of interact and act on uh, the activities of the DAO through dashboards and AI powered interface. So these are certain key components, and if you look at the deeper aspects, right? So the key components and then sub aspects of the architecture. So basically, smart contracts, we all know it automates the governance rules and proposals, and it encodes voting mechanisms and treasury operations. So guys, if you carefully look, any organization has its own budget, right? Its own funding mechanism because of which activities happen. So similarly, Davos is like in crypto world or in blockchain world, DAO is like a decentralized autonomous organization, which is usually backed by a treasury of token. So how effectively the token can be used is also can be encoded in the voting mechanisms, and the treasury operations can happen in a transparent way. Because today we have seen many organizations where a lot of fund mismanagement or fund deviations happening across. And very recently, I saw a news, one of the startup which raised huge, like, I mean, millions of dollars of money. And now the founder is, I mean, the investors have put a case on founder that the fund is mismanaged within that organization. Because see, investors look at what? Investors look at the balance sheet, the EBIT, or how what is the burn rate. So it they only look at the broader financial statement, but they don't really get to see how each rupee or each dollar is being spent. But the beauty of decentralized autonomous organization is every spend happens on ledger, and all the stakeholders have near real time visibility to what purpose it is spent. So that way there is lot of transparency with respect to treasury operations and voting mechanisms in a DAO. And of course, as discussed in the previous slide, AI agent layer. So if I were to elaborate, then AI models analyze the proposals, predict outcomes, recommend actions, right? And then agents can dynamically adapt the governance policies, because each DAO has its own performance metrics and certain dynamism in terms of governance. Say, for example, for a policy to go through, at least two-thirds of the votes should happen. Let's assume, okay. But consistently, the DAO performance is below 50% of participation. Then an AI agent can dynamically kind of drive the governance policies and recommend and take consensus, or can take a active role. Because at the end of the day, blockchain can capture the moments, capture the votes, and assure the integrity, but it can't give insights on what can be updated or what can be I mean what can be followed. So in that context, an agent, AI agent layer is something of value add. And then comes decentralized identity layer. As I told you, it ensures participants are verified and unique. And it basically Sybil attacks is like impersonation attacks can be avoided. And reputation, because not every DAO is just to manage tokens or treasury. Okay. Every DAO will have its own fund, but still the purpose of DAO need not be just to manage the treasury or fund. Sometimes certain DAOs are identity based, or reputation based. So they won't have any token as such, but they are reputation based. So let me give you an example. So let's take a skill DAO. So what is a skill DAO? Let's assume I'm creating a skill DAO based on JavaScript. Let's assume, okay. So all the developers in the world who have skill set on JavaScript can join this DAO. This is one. Second, how do I make sure all of them are actual individuals who are seriously capable of JavaScript? Maybe I organize a frequent code challenges and people start contributing to those code challenges, and I can build reputation on the quality of the contributions given, and that code contributions, based on that I can define the reputation engine. That way, maybe the top 100 developers in the world on JavaScript, I can kind of give them an opportunity or a governance token to drive the future of JavaScript development. Or we all know, say, for example, Linux Foundation, or there are many open source projects, right? All these organizations also can eventually evolve into DAOs, because there are different contributors who contribute to the code, and all these contributors, they just contribute for the passion and for the recognition, that's it. But there is no ROI at all. So who is earning? So say for example Linux Foundation, let's assume, okay. So if you take Linux Foundation, basically they take like the certification fees, or the certified service providers fees, there is membership fees, and all they do is basically they govern all the contributors, open source contributors who is contributing to the project. But does contributor get some ROI out of it? It is on the responsibility of the contributor to highlight his work and grab projects or get job opportunities and all. But the organization itself will not reward a contributor directly. But now let's assume a decentralized autonomous organization to drive a open source project where any outcomes which are coming is basically verifiable on blockchain, and they also get some ROI in the form of tokens or in the form of verifiable reputation, whatever. So in that context, decentralized identity can play a role to give ROI to all the stakeholders or contributors to the DAO in the form of tokens or in the form of reputation. And then comes consensus and data storage layer. Basically, if you are going with a on-chain data storage, then all the governance decisions, votes, proposals, everything is stored on chain. And then maybe some off-chain data related governance, you can kind of put it on a distributed storage systems like IPFS. And then the user interaction layer, which I already highlighted, basically some UI screens for all the stakeholders to interact. So what does basically a DAO do? What is that key steps which happens? So first of all, in any DAO, there is nothing like hierarchies much. Of course, a DAO can have different roles, but based on the roles, a DAO governance can be defined such a way that you can define who can send proposals, who can vote, who can just follow the governance. So based on the roles of these participants in a DAO, the first step is proposal submission. So anyone who are authorized to submit a proposal for any change, it can be a change proposal or an update proposal, or so for that DAO, the first step is proposal submission, and then comes analysis and recommendation by AI agents. And third, voting and consensus. So each stakeholder will have their own dashboard through which they vote by after going through the policy or proposal. And then every individual will independently give their votes, and the final consensus results are visible on the ledger. And if it is good to go based on the governance defined, then execution and monitoring happens. So this is basically what DAO architecture, the layers, and then flow of operations. And coming to the convergence of AI and DAO governance, AI scalability, right? Basically, some complex, simple decisions like, I mean, something to be updated or some policy change, some compliance update, some treasury management rules, or some staking rules. These are like very basic, straightforward, but sometimes a decision making can be at a protocol level. I mean, bigger decisions. Then such complex decision making in large DAOs can be automated by AI agents based on the weightage given to the weightage given to those AI agents to participate in the decision making. And comes efficiency, obviously real-time monitoring and enforcement of DAO rules, and transparency. Obviously, we know all these decisions can be available for audit. So again, use cases of convergence, I told you already: treasury optimization by AI agents and risk assessment for DAO proposals. So I'll be talking more examples and real case studies in the coming slides, but I just want you to get accustomed with the key terms here. Okay. So now let's look at the identity risks, right? So just give me a moment. Just a moment. Yeah. So now let's look at the identity risks in the digital age, in the era of Gen AI. One, of course, we know the centralized systems are prone to data breaches. We have seen huge identity theft cases with Facebook, which changed its name as Meta recently. And then we have seen data breaches with even centralized or government sovereign ID systems like Aadhaar, right? So today, identity is whatever personal identifiable information of the users on these various platforms is very much prone for breaches, and identity theft costs like few billions of dollars globally. And some of the potential risks, like yesterday I told you, say some medical data kind of getting manipulated, or some identity data getting manipulated, biases. So in the similar lines, misuse of biometric data in AI models is also one challenge. And then deep fake exploitation of personal identities, right? So when when multimodal LLMs came into emergence, people are able to give a audio sample of a person. Now, say for example, this session is being recorded, right? and the organizers can take a audio bite of mine, and they can always generate content, right? So if it is happening for an LMS, or if it is happening for a good purpose, then all good, right? But now I shared something on my Facebook, a personal audio bite. I mean, a personal video which has a audio bite of mine. Then someone calling on my behalf with my voice and trying to uh, kind of get benefited, whatever, right? So always this deep fake exploitation is something which is a big worry, right? And as more and more uh, generalized AGI, right? I mean, the I mean, if more and more efficient models come up, obviously it will be very difficult to identify a difference between deep fake and original. So in that context, the identity verification becomes huge. Uh, I mean, it becomes an imperative, right? And when this multimodal thing came up, actually someone faked a deep fake of CFO of a company's voice, right? Is used to kind of approve a multi-million invoice, I guess. I don't remember whether it was an invoice or some bill, but a payment happened. And only later they realized it was a deep fake. So the digital world is becoming more dangerous with AI, and we should be seriously looking at decentralized identity. Okay, because I understand sovereign identity like Aadhaar or DigiLocker based integrations and all is okay for certain services, because I mean, today you can't integrate DigiLocker or Aadhaar based authentication for every basic app, right? Mostly we typically go with a mobile phone number OTP based identity, but even that has become a problem with SIM cloning and certain things. So somewhere we need a robust self-sovereign identity on blockchain, and any identity, whether it is sovereign identity or an app-based identity, a reputation-based identity, or anything. So the future of identity in digital world is multidimensional, and that is only way to kind of address the challenges which can come with Gen AI. And now let's look at the architecture for AI driven identity and privacy. So if you look at the key components again, one, the decentralized identity layer. Obviously, I told you a self-sovereign identity management. Then an AI privacy layer, kind of using federated learning and zero knowledge proof. So any fraudulent activity in the era of AI can be easily identified by looking at the patterns of activity. Because the beauty of semantic web is you can always identify certain patterns of activity. And any miscellaneous activity can be flagged, and a notification can come out. And second, as I discussed yesterday also, zero knowledge proof is going to play a very, very important role, because the only way to recognize if someone is manipulating the identity will be zero knowledge proof, where without revealing certain data, just with a context of data, you can identify whether that person is an individual or an deep fake. And then the data provenance. Yesterday also we discussed this. Data provenance, the referencing is something which also becomes a very important thing. And last but not the least, the access control layer, which enforces data access via smart contracts. So any user driven data across the applications will be owned by a wallet. And we also know this soul bound token, correct? Where an individual soul will have only one soul bound token, and the wallet which holds that soul bound token can be the ultimate decentralized identity use case. And I'm not sure if some of you are aware of this project called World Coin. So how many of you know this World Coin? Anyone? So that is one
No,
of the
sir.
ambition. Yeah. Did you hear about that World Coin?
No, sir.
Okay. So World Coin is basically a company, a decentralized identity company backed by Sam Altman of OpenAI. And what they are trying to do is like how uh, for Aadhaar creation, we give fingerprints and some biometric data, right? So now what these people are doing is they are trying to do a decentralized Aadhaar at a global level where anyone can give their biometric data and an identity is created for them on that DID platform. And they want to integrate all the services towards that wallet. So eventually, we all will be recognized as not a country-based citizen. I mean, of course, a country-based or sovereign identity will be still be there, but in a world level or a global level identity project cannot be taken up by an individual country. So obviously, it should be a decentralized autonomous organization which can fairly manage such a global identity system. So in that direction, if you are interested to go deep dive into a DID at a global level, I think one best scenario, I mean, one best company, I mean, one company who is doing its best, I would say, to kind of do it is WorldCoin. And there are lots of protocols also who are supporting this decentralized identity implementations. For example, Hyperledger, you have Hyperledger Indy, which is a decentralized identity framework. Or if you take Polygon, Polygon created their Polygon ID, but now they changed the name as Privado ID. So Privado ID is also a decentralized identity implementation. I mean, a framework with which organizations can create their DIDs. So coming to AI-driven privacy and identity management, the first activity is a DID creation and verification, and it may involve capturing a mix of biometric data plus certain identifiers. And then the second is data sharing with consent. So very soon, more and more people will be kind of get accustomed with more and more data sharing with consent. And say you go to a hospital and you want to share your electronic medical records. So eventually, the moment you take an appointment, you are actually giving a consent to a doctor to access your health wallet and kind of capture certain previous medical conditions and all. So data sharing with consent is another aspect. And third, validation and privacy preservation. So sometimes you need not disclose the old data, right? Again, as I gave example yesterday, if I want to prove my age is above 18, I need not give my Aadhaar, which also captures or which also has my address, my data, I mean my date of birth or my surname. All this is not required. I can use a kind of zero knowledge proof and validate that I'm above 18 without even sharing my date of birth. So this is And another example, so one another interesting decentralized identity project which we are working on at IDS is the use case of proof of personhood. That means tomorrow an insurance can also be managed by a DAO, right? You can have an insurance DAO. Today, if there is an organization who is like biggest insurance companies in the world, you can also have a DAO to manage insurance of a group of people. And one of the biggest challenge for this kind of use cases is a verifiable identity, right? But if we solve the problem of identity, then you can always give services. Any service in the world can be driven by decentralized autonomous organizations. So all I want to tell you is we will get into a future where every big organization in the world will be replaced by a decentralized autonomous version of the organizations. As simple as that. Where the people, the users will own the ownership of that organization, and they all govern the rules, the decisions, and then AI will play a very good role in governing such huge citizen scale or global scale organization. And then audit, revocation. So all these are also can be baked into uh, the system. And coming to the key components of architecture, I already told you, decentralized identity layer. So there are lots of blockchain frameworks which support DID standards. And now that the good thing is a lot of standards are also emerging. And one of the, one broadly used open source framework and standard is W3C DID. And pretty much all the frameworks build on top of that identity layer. And then verifiable credentials are linked to user controlled wallet. Okay. Now imagine you are all alumni student, or eventually will become alumni students of VVIT, for example, right? I know there are participants from other colleges, but I'm just giving an example of VVIT. Now imagine all the alumni students kind of decided to give back something to the college. Okay, let's assume. Now, while the students of VVIT are at college, they received certain NFTs, unique ones, which they can't which they can't really transfer to someone else. Students of VVIT for a particular batch. Let's assume a simple use case. And all these people, once they come out, they got joined across the organizations. But still, if those lets can come together and can contribute or create a kind of fund to support the college on certain activities or whatever, they can form a DAO. And that DAO can kind of drive the transparency, the treasury management, the activities, track and trace of those things. So that is where basically the verifiable credentials linked to user controlled wallets comes into picture. Now, what is a verifiable credential? While you are in college, you got that NFT, which is a kind of acting as a verifiable credential. Or if your college is issuing issuing a university, your college certificates or transcripts on blockchain, then that also can act as a VC, which is linked to user controlled wallet. Or let's take a broader another use case. There is a municipality. And today we all know that whatever taxes we pay, like for house taxes and all, they go to kind of a department, at a state level, and then again the fund goes back to the municipality. It may be proportional or it may not be proportional, right? But imagine a DAO kind of mechanism where a group of community decided they would take up certain activities within that community, can always form a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, and they can govern the way the development activities happen in that community of say 1,000 houses or 10,000 houses. So don't just restrict your thought process of an organization to a company or a startup or a government. A DAO can go beyond. You can create a global DAO based on skill, based on a common interest, based on a connection to a university, right? Now, say a university, a global university having people across the world working across the companies. Can they all come together and can do something big? Yes, why not? So identity is going to play an amazing role, and verifiable credentials integrated to the wallets is also going to play a very important role. A lot of new business models will be emerging out of them soon. And then comes AI privacy layer. So I already told you, an AI model can be trained on an encrypted data sets using federated learning. So that means all the, and I'm sure some of you might be aware of this term called RAG, RAG. Anyone? RAG? Did you hear about this term RAG in generative AI? Anyone?
Retrieve augmented generation.
Yeah. So what does a RAG do? Now, whenever you give a prompt to a LLM model, it gives a response based on all the data on which it is trained. But if you want very specific response against a limited data set or an organizational level data set, then you can use a RAG. So what RAG does is basically it takes data from a local database, okay, and then it kind of gives a response in the context of that. So a DAO also can have a database of the activities of the DAO and the knowledge base of the DAO and certain personalized responses can be generated based on that data. And that data can be trained in a federated way. That means because all that data belongs to different stakeholders in a DAO. Because I told you already, DAO is not by one organization. It is like multiple stakeholders coming together. So that means each user has their own privacy, their own wallet, their own control over their data. So now if a DAO wants to implement a AI privacy or an AI agentic AI layer, obviously the model can train on encrypted data sets. So that way there is no data breach or leakage, but still a model is trained on top of it. And zero knowledge proof enable validation without exposing raw data. So that is the second component. I mean, second key components of the second layer. Then provenance, something which we discussed, access controls, encryption layer, then user control layer. So here I told you like personal AI agent, right? Yesterday when I was talking about so think like this. In future, I mean very near future, each one of you will have one or many AI agents whom you train on certain things, certain activities, whatever you do. And those AI agents can manage your decentralized identity credentials and can give consent based on the context of what you want to do. So this way, DID will be, so say for example, today, I mean, don't think that, oh, this is like crazy. How can that happen? Is it really practical? Cases. For example, today when I do my IT filings, I just share my data with my CA, and once all the things are ready, basically what they do is they generate a kind of digital signature schema, which request based on my DigiLocker, and I just give a code based on my Aadhaar that yes, I'm doing the filing and I'm good with this, right? So similarly, in future, you might be receiving more and more requests, or if you don't want to receive so many requests of this kind of things, then an AI agent which you train will decide or take a call, and such decisions are captured on an immutable ledger so that you can keep track of them. So this is something which is going to happen very soon. And even if you open your Aadhaar app, okay, you can see the ledger of all the authentications you have given in past, whether taking a SIM card, whether linking your PAN with Aadhaar, or whether applying for a gas cylinder, or buying an insurance policy, opening a bank account. Now, just imagine the quantum of activity going beyond country at a global level. You are working at a global organization, you are working on a small task given by a global organization. You are contributing to a open source on one organization. So you can, whatever activities you do, there is certain identity which will be attached to your decentralized identity. So that is where a personal AI agent managing DID will become a need in in near future. And user interacts with mobile wallets or browser extensions anyways, because most of the Web3 wallets we know are browser based. So again, coming to the convergence of AI and blockchain for identity, right? So while to conclude, basically, the convergence is about securing the data provenance for AI training, and then enhancing decentralized identity usability through faster verification. So say verifiable credentials, like say AI validates documents against a blockchain, or a decentralized KYC where AI automates the identity verification, the steps involved. So this is like a broader understanding of what should I say, the AI governance in DAO, and AI based, sorry, a decentralized identity backed uh, governance. So visualize like this: you have a global or a local or a activity based or a skill based. So this is like how an ecosystem comes together and they form a DAO. Okay. So in that DAO, you have the layer one, the blockchain layer, where the consensus happens. And then on top of it, you have a decentralized identity layer where all your identities, identity data is captured. And then on top of it, you have an agentic AI layer. Okay. And then on top of it, you have your value exchange, maybe a wallet with tokens and all. And then on top of it, you have an user experience layer through which you interact with this application. So this is how the future of organizations and the future of work will be. See, if you give it deep thought in future, individual will be working for multiple organizations. Today, it is like you have an organization for which multiple people work. But in future, an individual will work for multiple organizations against the skill. So whatever skill they have, based on that, will be kind of getting tasks. And as more and more tasks executed against a particular skill, your reputation in that DAO grows, and more tasks can be attracted. and organizations will be seamlessly paying you through smart contracts. So that is where the era of true decentralized autonomous organizations and decentralized autonomous employees and decentralized autonomous work can happen. Okay, so that is like the what should I say, the uh, bigger future which will be kind of guiding all the efforts happening today. Okay, so I mean with this we shall kind of conclude the first part of the session. So we'll take a quick break of 10 minutes and then we'll continue with the real world case studies and deeper
Time
aspects.
exit only for
Yes, sir. Can you please provide insights on how to choose the most suitable crowdfunding platforms? Can you give a specific examples on crowdfunding platforms?
Okay. So when I say funding, ma'am, see, today if you take a token, right? When you launch a token, basically people, I mean, once the token is listed, a lot of people across the world will fund by buying those tokens. So when I say crowdfunding, it is basically dealing with a token and raising funds through token. And when you ask me, I mean, if at all you ask me what is the best platform to raise funds or do crowdfunding, it is like you have multiple ways. One, you have an IDO, which is initial DEX offering, where you have a decentralized exchange and you will be kind of deploying a smart contract with certain number of tokens which you will be listing on that decentralized exchange, and people can swap their existing cryptocurrency with the token and buy them. Okay, so this is IDO, and there are a lot of decentralized exchanges. For example, you have Aave, you have uh, um, I'm bad at remembering names, but let me quickly share a couple of ideas.
Okay.
Yeah, just a moment.
Okay,
Dex.
sir.
So if you take Uniswap, right? So that is
Yeah.
one of the very early player and largest DEX, I would say. Uh, I mean, with respect to kind of doing IDOs. IDO is initial DEX offering. Okay. Then you have
Okay.
IEO. So IEO is nothing but initial exchange offering. So this is like centralized exchanges. So for example, globally, there are many cryptocurrency exchanges like Coinbase, you have Binance, you have, for example, uh, uh, BitGet, right? You have Coin Store, and in India we have Coin DCX. So there are many centralized exchanges which are regulated and um, I mean where they maintain the identity of the people. They do KYCs and all, and they allow people to kind of list their token and do crowdfunding. Okay. And last
Okay.
but not the least is ICO. So this is third way of
Yeah.
doing fundraise, which was happening long back, like initial coin offering, where people sell their tokens from their website itself. Okay, but today ICOs are not that popular because a lot of fraudulent projects raised funding through selling their tokens by showing some utility and all, but then they kind of dumped them after making money. So today ICOs are not happening, only IEOs and IDOs are happening. Yeah.
So, sir, what is the research scope of crowdfunding for our research scholars and faculty community?
So
research
again,
scope.
I think that's a yeah. So that's a interesting and what should I say? Something which should be explored because today, for example, most of the university, university R&D activities are funded by either governments, right, or big corporates doing some CSR activities and all. But what I feel is eventually a fundraise can happen for a research project directly from the people whose problem will be addressed from that research. Now that can
Okay.
happen only when you can convince the end users or end target user groups by
Mm.
saying that, hey, this is the project or this is a research we would do and this is our roadmap and this is what we want to do. So you can like typically how a protocol or a D app is launched with white paper. A university faculty with a group of faculties from other universities can come together based on their reputation, based on their previous research work. They can kind of launch a white paper saying this is a bigger societal problem which we want to address and these are the target user groups and and this is what we want to kind of do the research. And you can always say transparently whatever activities we do, whatever efforts we put as part of research, we will display, we will showcase on chain or we will put them on chain. So that way you can always kind of raise funds from the target user group.
Okay,
That is
sir.
possible even today. I don't think it is
Yeah.
of future. No one is thinking in that lines maybe, but that is something which is even possible today.
Okay, sir.
And that's a
Sir, how
good thing
do
also because yeah, because
yeah,
as part of Bharat Blockchain Network, VVIT is one of the 150 university stakeholders of Bharat Blockchain
yes, sir.
Network, right?
Yes, sir.
So faculty across the country can come together, can launch a research project or backed by some token-based funding or fiat-based funding.
Oh, sir, how
Yeah, that
can
can be
we
pursued
include
these days.
this
Yeah.
crowdfunding education into the entrepreneurship or to our business courses, sir, or in engineering course curriculum?
Okay.
What are the
So see,
prerequisites for this crowdfunding education?
so I think more than crowdfunding, I would say crowdsourcing the content is important.
Oh, okay.
Because see, it's not about funding the course, right? See, multiple CSR companies. So say something like this. Most of the CSR activities happen today through NGOs or some Section 8 companies, right? Now a
Oh,
Section 8 company can create a DAO and they can transparently manage. So they can tokenize the fund. For example, let me give an example. So there are five big companies like Tata, Reliance, Infosys, Wipro, and some other company like say Flipkart. Okay, let's assume. So these five companies are doing CSR funds and they have a focus fund for education. Let's assume. Okay. Now this DAO can pool whatever X, Y, Z, A, B kind of fund from all these people. And what they can do is they can tokenize that fund. Let's assume I received 100 crores from these five organizations. Now these 100 crores, you can launch a 100 crore tokens with each token having a value of 1 rupee. Let's assume. Okay. And that can be a utility token. So don't make it a security token and allow trading. Rather, you won't do allow trading on that, but it is only a utility token. Now that DAO, for example, identified 10,000 students. Now these 10,000 students will be studying across various institutions and you can integrate a DID there, a decentralized identity.
oh,
And all the students' identity, which university they belong, all that data is captured and distribute these 100 crore worth of tokens to all these 10,000 students over 4 years. But the smart contract and governance of the DAO says that unless until they pass the first year, the second year funds won't be given. Now,
Yes.
once they pass the first year, those tokens can go from the student to the college, and the college can come back to DAO and convert their tokens back into fiat. So this way, Infosys can explicitly know what is that fund they gave, to whom that got benefited, in spite of they working with different funds coming together. Right? So this is with respect to kind of creating a crowdfunding for education. Okay. But now coming to crowdsourcing for educational content. So today we see lots of every company in the country or every company in the industry is giving their own courses on each subject. Now for a university to put multiple courses as part of the value added courses in a degree is a challenge, because they have limited credits which they can give against industry courses. But imagine the board of studies coming together and you have a crowdsourced based content. So say every university is willing, every industry is giving access to their courses free of cost. Whatever courses are being given free of cost, you can crowdsource that content and you can do some evaluation, curation of the content, and can define a comprehensive course content against all this back. So this kind of models also can, emerge through a DAO kind of mechanism where multiple stakeholders can vote and transparently show why certain decision is taken against that content.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Yeah. So any other questions?
Okay, sir. I can have a
Oh, okay. So we can
break.
have a quick break. Yeah. So let's have a quick break for 10 minutes and then we'll continue further. But please, I want more and more interaction. We have participants of 133 and I hardly see 2 to 3 kind of people being proactive. So if you kind of shying away, not asking questions directly, you can put them in the chat and I can address them. Because at the end of the day, I can share only thoughts, ideas, experiences. But unless until you ask deeper questions, I will not be kind of able to go deep dive and give specific inputs. Okay. So please take the leverage and ask more specific questions for me to deep dive. Yeah. Okay. So let me put up a timer for 10 minutes and then you can come back. Okay.